Sweet. Hello, world. This is the Podlayer team doing some more of our Track 2 voicing. I am Naiji Coach. With me, I have Naiji's Mitchell, Ben, and Glenn. And we are on to the level 5 material, which is the human design. So, this is where we talk about all the stuff that's happening underneath the hood, so to speak, that explains the physiological cues that we're seeing in the Mojo phenomenon. So, these are the drivers and the basic principles of what makes it all work. All right. So let's go ahead and just dive on into it. Ben, you'll take lead in the first one.
All right.
Is the Mojo phenomenon? How many cases have been studied and from what demographics? How intrinsic is the Mojo phenomenon to the human species? How does Mojo relate to other species?
Mojo refers to a person's complete self, which has many aspects to it, such as one's essence, innate nature, cognitive configuration, qualia, soul, and much more. The phenomenon that Podlayer has discovered includes all of these ways of understanding the human condition, requiring a unique, all-encompassing term. We chose to call the phenomenon Mojo.
And that is italicized, right?
Yes, it is. So, do we need to do it, or?
No, I believe it means it's covered in your level 2 stuff.
Oh, okay. I wasn't entirely sure on that before. We may have talked about before, but I didn't quite remember.
Yeah, no worries at all. So I think these questions are actually referring to that next paragraph.
Oh, okay, so the next one. All right, sounds good. The Mojo phenomenon is the currently occurring phenomenon in nature of the fundamental design of humans that is observable through physiological cues by anyone who is properly trained. From an incoming data from ongoing research that Podlayer is doing, which includes over 20,000 case studies from many different cultures and walks of life. This phenomenon has been observed in all humans with sufficient media to work. The data also strongly indicates that the phenomenon has been the core driver of the entire human species and all its endeavors, for at least as far back in evolutionary history as humans have been considered hominids. Most likely, the phenomenon is something that is inherent to all life forms to some degree or in some manner.
Cool. Take your time when you're ready.
Cool.
see another possible error. And maybe it's just mine because we know my book's not. In the second sentence, it says.
Second sentence, where are we at?
Like at the end, maybe it's not an error. It might be fine, but I would just normally say it differently, I guess.
Sure. What's that?
This phenomenon has been observed in all humans with sufficient media to work. I don't usually say like work with.
Yes.
I guess you can just say work because like you're working the media, but
No,
I mean, like,
I like that. No, that's a good catch. Thank you. Work with. Got it.
Yeah, that did sound a
a
little
little
weird
more
to me.
specific.
So, no,
I mean,
that is usually how we stated. Good catch.
Yeah.
the Moja phenomenon is the currently occurring phenomenon in nature that is the fundamental design of humans that can be read through physiological cues by those who are properly trained to do so. We have thus far 20,000 case studies from individuals from all walks of life, from people who have sufficient media to work with. Most notably are people who are very well known. We tend to have more of those, major celebrities than people who are more normal, or I guess more like than people who are you would consider just regular citizens. But in general, we have people from all different walks of life. The phenomenon is there's strong evidence to suggest that the phenomenon is the core driver of the human species, and that there's data to suggest that this has been going all throughout human history since humans can be considered hominids. Most likely, Mojo plays a large part in all other life forms in some way or in some manner.
Thanks. Mitchell?
Alright, the Mojo phenomenon is the currently occurring phenomenon in nature related to the fundamental design of humans, and it's observable via physiological cues from anyone who's properly trained. We've studied some 20,000 or more cases of examples of people with different categorizations of this phenomenon, and from all kinds of cultures and walks of life, and we're always looking for more, as long as that they have sufficient media to work with for our purposes, which, since we have so many, the requirements are getting more and more refined. From what we can see from the data, the Mojo phenomenon seems to be intrinsic enough that it's been a core driver of the entire human species since humans have been considered hominids. and Mojo phenomenon relates to their species because we're studying it in humans, but it seems to make sense that it would exist to some degree or in some manner in other life forms as well, due to the kind of biological continuity.
Boom. Glenn?
Be right back.
All right, so the Mojo phenomenon is the fundamental, has to do with the fundamental innate nature that all humans come equipped with from, conception, I guess you could say. And it has to do with, and it's capable of being read in terms of physiological cues by anyone who has the proper training in order to be able to see the cues, because it does take effort in order to be able to see the phenomenon. As far as case studies, there's been more than 20,000 case studies that have been done so far by Podler, given the available media that we have to work with, because not all people have enough, we call it video media and picture media, that is considered suitable to be able to be properly read, and mostly that has to do with demographics that are more publicly available, like actors and actresses, anyone who's on TV, movies, that sort of thing, where we're actually able to see their cues more clearly and effectively. And as far as how intrinsic it is to the human species, given that the phenomenon seems to be, it seems to be related to every single human that has been effectively read. It would only seem fair to want to say that it is a very, very strong core driver in all of the human species in terms of our evolution and everything, at least as far back as history goes, in terms of back when we were hominids and stuff. And then as far as other life forms go, there's strong. It seems reasonable to want to assume that there's a strong hypothesis that one could throw out there that other animals, other creatures, are likely to also have the Mojo phenomenon a part of their their fundamental innate nature as well. Maybe not to the same degree as humans, but definitely because we all as far as evolutionary terms go, we are all connected to the same web as far as this, evolution goes in that sense. We came from apes, and then apes came from some other animal, and then other animals are all connected to some one animal that used to exist, and then organism, and then so it only makes sense that evolutionary speaking, they would also have the Mojo phenomenon a part of their system to some degree as well, but maybe not as to the same degree as it is in humans. So yeah.
Yeah, you got it. And just for like a little kind of logic on that that comes to my mind is if you think about language is the same kind of correlate you made as far as theoretical hypothesis, which is most scientists think that the abilities of the human to have language predate language by quite a bit, because just logically speaking, Occam's razor, it generally speaking in evolution, it doesn't make sense for someone to just suddenly come on the board with no precursor steps. So when humans started writing down language and formalizing it, most scientists, although there's actually no proof of this really, but it's generally considered there was probably a long legacy of oral tradition before the written tradition came in, because to have the kind of tech just pop out of nowhere would be highly unusual.
Yeah, you can see that with just animals right now, like dogs and bamboos and like chimpanzees. They don't have any kind of way to write any of the stuff that they're saying down, but they can understand, like based on, that groundhog that kind of pops up and belches that note. Like, yeah, that's the animal communicating something to the rest of their tribe. So obviously, yeah, being able to speak language would obviously come first and will have developed quite a bit before you get into actually writing stuff down and recording that would require something much more.
Indeed, even though that's where most of the hard evidence is written, there's lots of
Right.
hard evidence of that. All right, next up, Mitchell, take lead. What is qualia? What does it include? Who has studied it? What would it mean to accurately define it? What is the current status of this field of inquiry?
In regards to the human condition, which is the context Butler theory is coming from, the concept of qualia refers to the inherent qualities of a person's innate nature. This includes everything about a person, both definably and indefinably, both consciously observed and unconsciously observed, that is indicative of the greater overall singular pattern that is a person's way of being. Many of the greatest minds in human history have unsuccessfully attempted to establish human qualia that is quantifiable, empirical, and falsifiable. Since qualia is the core driver of everything humans do individually and as a species, if qualia could be accurately defined for humans, it would basically decode the DNA of the human condition. The methodology and evidence required to crack this case wide open has never been put forward until now with Butler theory and the data it is publishing. Okay. So qualia, in the context that popular theory comes from, which is studying the human condition, refers to the inherent qualities of a person's innate nature. This is going to include everything about a person, both definably and indefinably, consciously and unconsciously, and anything that is indicative of a greater singular pattern that makes up a person's way of being. The greatest minds in human history have been coming at this problem in different ways for some time, but it's never been done in a way before that is quantifiable, empirical, and falsifiable. And so the current status of this field is basically that the methodology and evidence to really tackle it has not really been put forward until now with popular theory and the data that it's publishing, which will kind of let us decode the DNA of the human condition, so to speak, because this qualia is one of the core drivers of everything humans do in this species.
Oh, nice. Glenn,
All right, I'm going to see if I can do this.
take your time.
So, in terms of what qualia is, as far as the way a Podler is approaching it, it has to do with the fundamental, inherent qualities that make a human or an innate nature, what they are, and their intrinsic qualities that make them the kind of person that they are, and that has to do with their mojo and their personality and all these different things that influence them and come out in the way that it does. It includes everything unconscious, anything that can be unconsciously observed or consciously observed, anything that can be, visibly seen or not. Actually, let me cover that again.
Any questions, feel free to ask.
Sure. All right, so when it comes to qualia, in terms of how Podler is approaching it, it has to do with the inherent qualities that make an innate nature, what it is, and all of that has to do with that, like, what makes them who they are, basically. This includes basically anything that's definable or undefinable, anything that can be consciously observed or unconsciously observed, that basically has to do with the entire the entire pattern, singular pattern of that person, given their way of being, that you can be able to just tell, like, that's something that Bobby would do, like that's something that he does, or really being able to understand that very, very elusive, very huge pattern of a person, of what makes a person who they, who and what they are. Being able to accurately define the understanding of what qualia is something that. Oh no, hold on. Who has studied it? In terms of who's studied it, there's been many people that have attempted to try and figure out what qualia would mean in terms of the human condition, but many have come up short because they were not able to provide the sort of quantifiable data, the empirical data, as well as the falsifiable data that's required in order for their work to be taken seriously, not like the way Podler has been able to do with all of its publications that it's been providing. So getting back to the question of being able to accurately define it, and what that would mean basically is that the qualia is something that in terms of the human condition, in terms of humans and their way, it is basically the core driver of the entire species. So being able to understand that would be akin to sort of like trying to crack the case of like, like being able to decode the DNA of the human condition in general. That's what that would basically be the same as, trying to be able to do. And Podler is basically doing that and has done that quite well.
I think you got it, because I think you answered last, actually.
Oh, have I?
I think you kind of looped it into an earlier question. You kind of got that as well.
Okay.
We said others have attempted to do it, but have not been able to. We have the evidence that's necessary. I think you did capture that. All right, Ben.
Right.
To you.
All right. In regards to the human condition, which is where Podler is coming from in studies, qualia refers to the inherent qualities that a person possesses that can be observed and represent a person's nature, innate nature, or everything about them, essentially. This includes everything that a person does and can be observed, both consciously and unconsciously. And these patterns, these observations that are being made, make up a larger pattern, which is a person's overall way of being. Many people throughout human history, have attempted to study qualia, but have been unsuccessful at demonstrating it in a evidence-based way, in a quantifiable, falsifiable way. To accurately define qualia in a quantifiable, falsifiable way would be essentially to decode the human condition. And that is exactly what we're doing right now. That is the current status of the operation, is to present this game-changing evidence that Podler has on qualia to the public.
Cool. All right, Ben. No, Glenn, you'll take lead in this next one. What is innate nature? How does Podler theory delineate innate nature qualia? In what context is the term innate nature often used by Podler practitioners?
Right, so innate nature refers to the energetic drivers underlying everything a person does, specifically what they are born and built to do by the qualia that natural law gave them. Podler theory delineates qualia as a person's mojo, as well as their corresponding peak pathway, unconscious genius, social alchemy relationships, and much more. It is often seen and used in Podler theory as a more naturalistic way of working with the mojo phenomenon that merges synergistically with all the other ways of working with it.
I'm not sure why this is, but for some reason, and this isn't an error, but for some reason, whenever you use a capital I, the next letter is always like way further apart than the other letters.
What instance are you referring to?
Like anytime you use a capital I, the letter after it is like way further apart than it is for other letters.
Weird.
Each character is given a certain amount of space in order to, do its thing, basically express itself. So I is the most narrow and the most, it takes up the least amount of horizontal space, and so that's why it looks like that.
Yeah, I don't see it on my end
because it isn't always
of PDF.
It's not always the same though, because if you look at other characters, you'll see that some are shorter than others. Like the lowercase I is like really tiny, and then the lowercase s is like huge by comparison.
Weird.
I guess it might just be capital letters, but still that's a little bit weird.
I don't see it on my end, but I'm using Word. Maybe it has to do with conversion to PDF.
It could be.
It does something to it in the formatting. Do you guys see what you're talking about in your PDFs?
Well, I'm looking at the word innate, and innate looks good to me.
Okay.
And as far as
I
other,
don't know for sure. It might be happening. It might be subtle.
You don't see the large gap between I and N in innate?
Yeah, it's definitely larger than the two N's. But
I mean, it's
not
like
by,
it's
like,
probably
a
like
lot.
5 times the size of the gap between the two ends, at least, right?
Yeah, for me it's not that much.
no, it doesn't look nearly quite as much. I'm looking at the very bottom of the eye, and I'm noticing that little bottom lip there is touching the N. And so
We're not even touching the N. So
we're not touching it, but like very close to it. So I don't know. To me, it looks perfectly good.
It looks really far apart from me. Like it looks like there's an entire space in between the I and the N.
Maybe it's something to do with your programming or your computer, or maybe it's that you have a version that was not corrected. Maybe there's an extra space in there.
I don't
yeah.
think so, because it happens every time there's an I. Like if you go to it in the last sentence, like it's basically the same problem. It's like almost an entire space there.
But not.
So, yeah, but not. It's definitely not an actual space. It's so much space that almost looks like it's a complete space in between the I and the T there.
Weird. But Mitchell and Glenn, you're not experiencing that.
No, not me at all. Mine looks very clean.
Exactly. Any space at all? I mean,
Any unusual space between the characters in a
definitely
word.
not even. I mean, it might be like the I might be look a little bit farther from the N than the two N's are. But
do you think
like,
it's even
like
like?
5 times.
Do you think it's even like twice as far for you?
Hard to say. I guess it depends where you're looking on the eye. If you're looking at like the inner eye,
Because
so
to
not
me,
like
the
those
eye
things,
the
but
eye actually
that might be
doesn't.
twice as far, but on the edge of it, it's probably not.
Because to me, the eye looks like basically a straight up and down line, so it doesn't matter like whether it's the top or the bottom of the eye in terms of how far it is from the end.
You even have that differently. Wow.
Like I can take a screenshot of it, like if you want, I guess.
Feel free.
Just want to ask a question. What is the for the very last sentence there, Coach? What's it is often seen and used in polytheory as a more naturalistic way of working with the Mojo phenomenon, emerges synergistically with all the other ways of working with it. What exactly is are you trying to say there?
Naturalistic is the main thing. If you get that, that's the key. Because when we talk about the phenomenon, we can talk about it as qualia, which is a bit more a philosophical way of saying it. Innate nature, that's kind of talked about almost like a naturalistic, and there's several terms we use to basically refer to the Mojo phenomenon. Some are more scientific sounding, some are the innate
The human
nature.
design sounds more like technical.
Exactly.
I sent a screenshot that shows how far away it is.
Where do you send it?
I just emailed it to you guys.
Okay. Sure, I'll take a look.
But that makes sense, Glenn?
Yeah. So yeah,
The main thing is just the fact that it's a naturalistic way of coming at it, because you can kind of play the phenomenon with different headspaces. So this is kind of the headspace of a naturalist.
Right. Okay. All right. I think I'm ready to do this one. All right. So, what is innate nature? So basically, innate nature.
Sorry. Go ahead. I'll help Ben afterwards.
Go ahead, Glenn.
Right. So innate nature basically refers to all the underlying energetic drivers that basically are responsible for everything that a human does. You know, and basically, it's more specifically, it's referring to like what an innate nature is, you know, designed to, you know, do, given what their natural gifts are, and that are given to them by natural law as a gift, basically. How does Podler theory delineate innate nature? Qualia. Hold on, I don't need to go back on this one.
No problem.
All right, if you just have a spare second, then yours does look way different than mine, Ben. So yeah, that's,
You guys can
take a look at it. Yeah, your eye doesn't
see
have
what
the,
looks like on my end. It's
your eye
pretty
look,
massive.
the whole style of the eye is completely different.
Yeah, you're looking. I think you have a different version or something.
I have the second edition of the book, but I guess maybe my PDF viewer just converted it to a weird font or something.
So.
It could be that like the font that the book uses, I may not possess that.
I
font.
definitely see what you're talking about in yours.
Yeah, that's obvious there.
But I don't think it'll really matter that much.
Oh, so that's what you meant by delineate.
Believe me, this is happening.
No, you're just crazy. Same thing.
Right. So, innate nature refers to basically the underlying energetic drivers that basically make a person, or make a, you know, that are underlying in what a innate nature is basically designed to do, or you know, that have to do with everything that a person is, and specifically it refers to the sort of the things that a person is born to do very well, given their energetic peak pathway and the way that their powers are ranked and all that sort of stuff. And that's basically a gift that's given to them by natural law. In terms of how Podler theory delineates innate nature, basically whenever a Podler practitioner refers to innate nature, they're referring basically to like a person's mojo, their unconscious genius and what that would be, and all the social alchemy relationships that are related to that person being that mojo, and much, much more than that as well. In the context in which, you know, the term innate nature is used by Podler practitioners, is that basically when we're basically referring to innate nature, it's done more so in the sense of referring to it as a sort of like in a more naturalistic kind of way, because it can be referred to scientifically with the term human design. It can be referred to as more philosophical, like with qualia, but innate nature is more of like a naturalistic way of approaching it.
Got it. Ben?
All right.
If you can decipher your version.
Yeah, mine works, I think, just fine. It's just there's just weird minor differences, I guess. So innate nature underlies is essentially underlies everything a person does in relation in regards to the qualia that they were born, that natural law gave them at birth. Polar theory delineates between innate nature based on innate nature of a person's mojo, their social alchemy relationships, of their peak pathway, uh, and of their unconscious and genius as well, and so forth. This is effective for understanding the mojo phenomenon in a naturalistic way, and also synergizes and merges with all other ways about understanding it.
Got it. Mitchell?
All right. So innate nature refers to the energetic drivers which underlie everything a person does, in particular, what they're born and built to do by the quality that natural law gave them. Polar theory delineates innate nature qualia with concept of mojo, and that has corresponding concepts for each person of their peak pathway, their unconscious genius, spirit forms, and social alchemy relationships. The term innate nature specifically is often used in a more naturalistic context of all the terms that refer to this kind of thing, and it merges synergistically with the other ways that we have of looking at it, like qualia of human design. So.
Boom. Got it. All right. Next up, Ben, you take lead. What is human design? What are 4 key principles of human design?
All humans have a psyche that is comprised of 8 powers that are differentiated, but within the context of being a holistic synergy, and is what term human design refers to. 4 of these powers are conscious, with the remaining 4 powers in the unconscious. The unconscious powers are not directly accessible, but they still have a major influence on the psyche. All 8 powers, both the conscious and unconscious ones, have a hierarchical ranking so that no 2 powers are of the same rank. It is the top 2 conscious powers of a given design and their specific ranking that gives each mojo its name and its special gifts.
Sounds familiar.
Have we covered this already?
There was something similar in terms of like
Did we cover human design? I'm trying to think. Like,
I think maybe,
or did we do
there was
it
like
just?
an IG.
I think maybe this was covered in another section. So maybe I should italicize this one as well.
Is this italicized? I mean, it's
Yeah,
not
that does
italicized.
sound really familiar. Actually, I have to be honest with you. I don't even normally say that.
I know. I remember. I thought I remember doing a beat on this, like
Yeah,
top 2 powers.
really long time ago.
Yeah. I'm going to make that italics then. So let's go ahead and go to the next one then.
Pretty confident on that one, actually.
The words have been changed though, and it's
Not much.
Yeah, I think it's a
Not
very
much.
interesting one that was done. Probably the sections.
Yeah, I think like whenever something is essentially covered, like where all the beats are covered somewhere else, essentially, I guess maybe not word for word, but
I try to capture that by italicizing them, but I think this one may have slipped by me.
that makes sense.
Here we go. What is cognitive configuration? How does Podler theory delineate cognitive configuration? In what context is the term cognitive configuration often used with Podler practitioners? So similar to that last one we did.
Cognitive configuration refers to the arrangement of the key drivers and processes in a person's psyche. Podler theory delineates these as the fundamental elements of human design, which are the 8 powers, the 10 energy fields, and the 20 social alchemy groupings. It is often seen and used in Podler as a more mathematical way of working with the mojo phenomenon that merges synergistically with all the other ways of working with it. cognitive configuration refers to the key drivers and processes in a person's psyche. Pod layer theory delineates between cognitive configuration into the 8 pod powers, the 10 energy fields, and the 20 plus social alchemy groupings. This is a very mathematical way of understanding the human design and the Mojo phenomenon, and it merges synergistically with all other ways of understanding it.
Boom. Done. Mitchell?
Okay. Cognitive configuration refers to the arrangement of the key drivers and processes in a person's psyche. Podler theory delineates cognitive configuration with fundamental elements of human design, and these are the 8 pod powers, the 10 energy fields, and the 20 social alchemy groupings. It's seen in pod layer cognitive configuration as a more mathematical way of looking at it, but which also, like innate nature, merges synergistically with the other ways of looking at it.
Good. Glenn?
Right, so cognitive configuration refers to the key drivers and processes that are in a person's psyche. The way in which Pollard delineates these fundamental human design elements can be broken down into basically the 8 pod powers within the person's psyche, the 10 energy fields that they give off, as well as the 20 social alchemy groupings and plus that they are a part of. Human design is the more mathematical way of approaching this particular aspect of the Mojo phenomenon, but it merges synergistically with all the other ways in which one can approach it.
All right, Mitchell, take lead. Next one. What is the psyche? What are psyche locations? What are the quadrants of the psyche?
Hold on. Aren't we on cognitive configuration?
We said that.
Oh, right. Never mind. Sorry.
In other words, what is the psyche? What are the psyche locations? What are the quadrants of the psyche? How does activity of the psyche relate to physiological cues? How does this relate to Mojo reading?
My book seems to only answer what is the psyche. Like, it's just one sentence.
Yeah.
I think I may combine them. So if you wouldn't mind, let's combine psyche. That one.
Of the 8 powers humans have, and psyche locations.
Let's see.
Or do you want? Because basically, there's
actually, do that sentence and psyche locations. So psyche and psyche locations.
So just psyche and psyche locations?
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, that makes sense. Oh, but there's also like conscious powers in between. Do we do that too, or?
No.
There's not of the 8 powers. No.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessary. That was actually covered somewhere else. I just put it there in the book because it was kind of a necessary linking step. But I think for this question, it's just psyche and psyche locations.
Okay, sure.
So when you're ready, Mitchell.
Sure.
Are you going to read that out?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I'm studying it.
Yeah, we
The
forgot.
psyche is the totality of the human mind and sentience, both conscious and unconscious. Psyche locations refers to roughly where activity occurs in the psyche when a given power is in use. The left front, the left rear, the right front, and the right rear quadrant of the psyche, as well as other subdivisions, each specialize in a distinct activity. These activities in the psyche manifest corresponding physiological cues, which can be read in a person's face, body, and voice. Reading these cues properly makes it possible to make connections between the various cue manifestations which parts of the psyche are simultaneously being activated, as well as distinguishing what power in a shared area of the psyche is the particular one that is in use.
I guess one just small thing is that when it says these activities in the psyche manifest corresponding physiological cues, I think you want to say corresponding to physiological cues.
Say it in the psyche manifest corresponding. Oh, just no ing, right?
What?
You want to say like
Wait, these activities in the psyche manifest corresponding.
two. So you just want to include two after that, I think.
Why?
I'm sorry.
Because if
Break it down for me again. I'm sorry, I missed what you're saying. My bad.
oh right, because if you say these activities in the psyche manifest corresponding physiological cues, they correspond to physiological cues, basically.
Yeah.
What is the error?
You want to say corresponding to physiological cues, I think.
Oh,
I think corresponding's fine.
Because I think corresponding physiological cues is actually a noun.
these activities in the psyche manifest.
To make it
Cues are a
verb,
noun
you want
corresponding to physiological adjectives.
What would your adjustment be, Ben?
adding two after corresponding.
Oh, okay. Manifest corresponding.
Because if you just say corresponding physiological cues, that can essentially just be like a noun. So
Right. So
you could say
What is a noun?
corresponding physiological cues.
psyche manifest cues. Right. That makes sense, right? These activities in the psyche manifest cues. Right.
Yes.
Okay. Then corresponding and physiological, aren't those kind of like adjectives?
Yes.
Why does that not make sense?
The activities manifest physiological cues which are corresponding to them. That's what corresponding means.
Are you talking to me or Ben?
Both of you.
Okay. So, please, if my grammar's off here, I know what I'm thinking, and I may be wrong, is if you said these activities in the psyche manifest cues, that would be grammatically okay, as cues being the noun, and then how does adding two adjectives in front of it make it not good? Ben, do you see what I'm saying? Ben, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, I can hear you. I'm just sort of processing.
So, like, if it was these activities in the psyche manifest cues, that would be grammatically okay. And then what's different above and beyond that is two adjectives in front of the noun. Is there something wrong with the adjectives?
No, I don't think so. I just, for some reason, like I was used to. Yeah, for some reason by ear it made not by grammar, but it just like sounded better to me to say that. So
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you could say something like these activities in the psyche manifest in a way that corresponds to physiological cues. But corresponding, what that adjective means is that it corresponds to those
Right.
activities. That's already kind of built into the word.
So I think it's okay. Please let me know if I'm not. Does it make sense, Ben?
Psyche manifest.
Say again. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm just give me a second.
Sure.
Yeah, shouldn't it be these activities in the psyche manifest as corresponding physiological cues or something along those lines?
Yeah, like to me, I guess it just didn't sound right. I'm just trying to figure out why it didn't sound right to me.
The activities in the psyche manifest.
No, the activities aren't
I
manifesting.
guess I'm trying to think what are the cues corresponding to?
the activities.
Corresponding
Activities.
physiological. Well, I think it works. Corresponding is kind of like an interesting word. It acts like a little bit of a
Do they
connecting word.
correspond to the psyche?
They manifest corresponding physiological cues.
The
It's sort of like
activities in the
it's like a
psyche
bridge. That word.
manifest physiological cues which correspond to them,
Would that be better?
which is what corresponding means.
Right. I just thought the way I did it was a little more efficient, but we can add in those other words if they would be better.
No, I wasn't suggesting you add those. I was saying that I'm basically saying the long way of what
Right.
corresponding is meaning.
Why not replace corresponding with as? That seems to be the most efficient, and it seems to make sense as well.
But it's not the activities in the psyche that are manifesting as physiological cues. They're themselves. Those activities are one thing, and those activities, in turn, manifest physiological cues, which are not them.
But correspond to them, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Okay.
It just sounded weird saying it at first, but it reads better after I read it a few times.
Okay. But no, I appreciate these discussions. So I'll make sure that
Yeah.
there aren't any missteps in the grammar.
Absolutely. Sorry, was it my turn?
It is.
I was like lost track because
No worries. No. But it's good at checking these things.
Red on a person's face, right?
You probably say later on, but yeah, I might actually do a little better.
Okay, I can see that. Which can be read on a person's face. Cool. Updated. Well, no.
Oh, it's referring to the body and the voice as well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so.
Oh.
And in's
Yeah.
a bit more general, so it would capture those three.
I got
But
it.
just the face, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, good point.
Oh, I don't know. It's kind of interesting because then you're saying you're reading in their body. I don't know.
Yeah, in the voice, I like reading in the.
but honestly, it's like it's kind of you just kind
Okay, how about through?
It's fine. I'm fine with that, honestly. But
Which can be read through a person's face, body, and voice.
Honestly, I'd be fine with either one. They're kind of those words are kind of imprecise.
What about from?
She read
I
from.
guess that works.
Yeah. From?
Through and from are a little bit bigger, so they sort of fit more, I guess. Like they basically fit more possibilities. If that makes sense.
Which word do we like?
So what?
I'm fine with that either.
I'm fine with any of them personally.
Say again?
I personally don't have much of a preference.
Okay, Glenn?
Glenn's
I can see the advantage of saying
Glenn,
I
if you
think
relate to-
from sounds kind of a bit weird, but I think it does make the most sense.
Read from a person's face. Okay, from.
Sure, different.
Done.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like when you say you're reading in something, like does that often mean that you're trying to understand it, or I don't know.
It does.
So I guess you could kind of go either way, but
I approach that more. I see that more as like going into something. Like in a face is like I'm thinking like in a person's face, Whereas on the face seems more like you're looking at it more detached and sort of like looking upon the face.
Yeah,
Whereas
but the thing is, the kind of vernacular that's commonly used is, I looked at her. I looked at the person in their face. That's commonly used.
that's more like an idiom. That's more like a pattern that people have gotten used to saying many, many times. In their face, you got in their face, like you got really up close and personal, sort of like,
Or like I
right
see
in
it
there.
No, no, no.
eyes or
I'm not talking about the proximity. I'm talking about I looked them in the face.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, I
I'll
know
just
you
say
mean.
I looked into a person's eyes.
Or like I saw something in their eyes, like I saw their love or
Like-
something or anything.
But from, I mean, I think from works. I mean, it captures those three.
I
Yeah,
think
definitely.
it is an idiom to sort of like describe.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with like metaphors and the way that people say things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From works. From's kind of
From's-
more a little vague, and that's good in a way because it gets the idea across, but captures all
I
three
like
things:
from.
the face, the body language, and the voice without any grammar.
From I actually think I like the most, but honestly, I don't.
Say again? What's that,
Oh,
Ben?
from actually, I actually think I might like from better than in,
Okay.
but it's I honestly think it's
No, I updated it. That's where it is now. I've got it updated to from.
Alright.
All right.
What do you mean?
So whenever you're ready.
because people say they read from a book or they read from right. That makes sense.
Cool. That works then.
See. Alright, so the psyche refers to the totality of the human mind and sentience, both conscious and unconscious. The psyche locations refer to roughly where activity is occurring in the psyche when you have a given power being used. And these quadrants, these locations are, we refer to them as the quadrants. And the quadrants, we have the left front, the left rear, the right front, and the right rear quadrants of the psyche. And other subdivisions as well within that, and they each specialize in a particular activity, or I guess we call those priorities. I think.
Activity work.
Yeah, activity's fine. I'm just saying in addition, I think we just call it like, like the towers, pilots, hunters, the other powers. But that's this. How's it do the psych-related physiological cues? If the activity in a certain quadrant is going to correspond to certain kinds of physiological cues, and that can be read from a person's their face, body, and voice.
Good.
And
Okay, yeah, more.
yeah,
That's like,
this relates to
look.
mojo reading because the mode, if you're properly trained, you can connect the various key manifestations to which quadrant of the psyche is being used, and then even within that, you can distinguish which power is being used within a shared quadrant.
What does that mean, the shared quadrant part?
So, like, not Nai and Pi
Right.
share the worldview
So
quadrant.
you,
Oh, right. So the quadrant that's being used, and then more specifically, which one is it, Ni or Vi, Ni or V, blah blah blah.
that's when your eyes go left, that'll tell the mojo reader that you're accessing the left
World
quadrant and that you were using Nai because you're Nai shape.
And the folly of the drifter check.
Right.
And look, that comes up a while.
You up, Glenn?
I used to use that stuff a long time ago. Now, like, I don't like think about it that much.
Is Glenn still here?
Is Glenn still here? Glenn looks pretty frozen.
He's just kind of looking at you like.
Like when I always get told is if you click on his picture, the
It
screen
won't
goes
go up.
blank.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Ben, do you want to go ahead and we'll get him when he goes back on?
Sure, I'm not completely ready, but I will be.
No, just take your time and
shortly,
just start
so.
working towards it.
Oh, he's back.
Okay. Back, Glenn?
Oh, are you back? No, he's still frozen. I hope so.
Yeah, you guys are kind of going out for me.
Yeah.
That's how I feel at you. Well, we can hear you now.
Usually when it's everyone else going out, that usually means the problem is on your end. Usually.
We've all still been here.
Oh, okay, it's all right.
Of course. We can hear you now, though.
Cool. Internet.
Grr.
It's always funny to look at like frozen expression on a person's face when they disconnect. I don't know.
No, my face was literally frozen.
Yeah, it's just because like it just freezes in like a really sometimes in kind of a
Awkward.
like a weird moment, and then like your mouth is kind of like hanging open, and then it's just like that for like
Awkward, right? It's like, yeah, Glenn's been smiling for 2 minutes straight now. In the same position. Kinda creepy.
That's just your picture.
I admire his smiling stamina.
It does get pretty tiring, doesn't it? Remember there was some like adage that frowning takes more muscles than smiling, so you should smile more.
Interesting.
frowning takes more stuff than.
Takes more facial muscles.
Oh, interesting.
All right.
Okay.
So, what is the psyche? So basically, the psyche has to do with is basically the entire mind as well as sentience and all the processes that are occurring, both conscious as well as unconscious. The psyche locations refers to roughly the locations where activity is occurring when a given power is being used. The quadrants of the psyche: the left rear, the front rear, the left rear, the front left, rear left, front right, and rear.
Glenn, you always go with the left, right first, and then the front, rear is second. That helps.
Are
It's like left front, left rear, right front, right rear.
okay, so it's the left and right first. Left front, left rear, right front, and right rear, which basically has to do with the different quadrants of the psyche. But there are other subdivisions of the psyche as well that also have their own specialization in terms of the activity that they're taking note of, or they're the kind of activity that they do basically. Logic-based, values-based, perceptionally, blah blah blah, so on and so forth. How does activity of the person's psyche relate to physiological cues? So physiological cues are very much related to the activity that's taking place. Given that a person's physiological cues are a manifestation of the corresponding power that's being used within their psyche. So if they happen to be using Nai, for example, or a worldview power, they're going to be shifting their eyes to the left, and that's going to be basically one way in which you can read that because both are intrinsically connected. You can't, you know, the thoughts that you're thinking, the psyche and everything that's going on within it also has some kind of a manifestation in terms of physiologically being observable as well. How does this relate to Mojo reading? Basically, that point, which has to do with the physiological cues being connected to the activity that's going on within the brain, you're able to read a person's physiological cues and backtrace what kind of powers are being used in the process of that, which quadrant is being used. But more specifically, you can even go further than that by then figuring out exactly which specific power is being used within that quadrant. Like they might be using they might be using worldview power, but then to go further and be able to say that, oh no, they're using a specific version of that quadrant cue, which has a more lucid, cunning quality to it, which is more related to the Nai as compared to the Vi. So, yeah.
Good. And then Ben?
Okay. The psyche is the totality of human mind and sentience, both conscious and unconscious. The psyche locations refer to the quadrants, psyche, from which the conscious and unconscious mind exists, in which there's associated activities with them, as well as in the subdivisions. And these locations are the rear left, front left, rear right,
No.
and
It's
right.
it's the left and right that comes first.
Right.
The what?
Left, right.
Left and right comes first.
Wait, left and right comes? I understand.
When you describe a quadrant, the left or right descriptor comes first.
Perfect. Yeah.
And
So
the
like left, front, left, rear.
front rear descriptor comes second.
Because we want to address the directive and adaptive
Yeah.
as being the more dominant feature as
Wait,
compared to the subjective and objective.
I did both the left ones and both the right ones.
No, I mean, you said like rear left and then front left.
It might have been you said it really
I
fast.
said rear left, then front left, then rear right, then front right.
So he's saying you should say left front, left rear, right front, right rear. The right first and the left first.
Wait, I understand. I did say left first.
But not right.
But
Maybe you were just saying it really fast, and Glenn heard that you.
I don't quite understand. I thought left was supposed to go first.
Did you say front, left? Is that what you said?
I said left rear, left front, right rear, right front.
That's
Okay,
correct.
okay.
That's correct.
Okay, that's correct then. Yeah, never mind.
You just said it. You just said it differently before.
That's exactly how I said it.
You probably just rattled off really fast, and then in the.
I know. I think I might
mean,
have like.
If you guys could tell me what I said that was different, I mean, I guess, but as far as I'm concerned, that's what I said.
No, but it sounds like you understand the concept. That's the key thing.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And there's activities associated with all of these. The way that it's associated with these activities is through physiological cues. There's physiological cues individually that relate to all of them. And that can be read in their face, their body, and their voice. Mojo reading properly and in proper training is really beneficial when it comes to the to informing on the quadrants of the psyche, because it helps you understand when a power is being used with a corresponding quadrant simultaneously, and it also helps you distinguish between which power within that psyche, within that quadrant, being used, such as whether Vi or Nai is being used when a when the eyes go to the left, for example.
Good.
Good.
Next up, Glenn, you'll take lead. What is each of the powers of the psyche in charge of, and what does it include? What is general preferred flow? What is this general preferred flow called?
Okay, so each of the powers of the psyche has a vast overall process that they are in charge of. This process incorporates all of the abilities associated with a given power plus much more. Although the various aspects of this process can be accessed in any order, there is a general flow that the process has that does have a preferred starting point and a preferred handing off point to the other powers. This general preferred flow of the various abilities associated with a given power is called its power flow. That's the right beat there?
Correct. Did that make sense?
Yeah, I thought for a second we were talking about peak pathways, but we're talking about the power flows within a single power.
Exactly. Basically, there's like a peak pathway for each power.
Yeah.
I guess one thing I did do differently is in the book it says to start with the left front, and I started with the left rear. I did do left before
No, that's
right.
fine. Yeah, no, that order.
So, but I just did the rear before the front in both cases.
Okay, but that's totally fine. That's totally fine.
So it was different. It still followed the left and right.
The logic, yeah.
Yeah, I think I was just hearing things. I thought maybe you were starting with saying rear left and then rear front. That was actually, I think I just imagined that. That was actually the way that I said it. So I was like hyper aware of like anyone making that same mistake.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite possible that I misspoke. I just couldn't quite like I couldn't quite figure out, I guess.
Yeah, but either way, when you explain yourself, you have the concept.
Yeah.
That's the key.
We're good. We're good.
Yeah, you knew what you were saying. What are the things called within the power? Those, like, there's the flow, which is like the flow that, you
I
know,
think we usually call them just abilities,
abilities.
power
So,
abilities, power flow abilities.
okay, cool. It's good to know what those are. So there's
Yeah.
powers, there's your mojo, there's your powers, and then there's your power flows.
Yeah, and I'm guessing. Sorry, I haven't actually read the. I've just started reading the paragraph. I haven't finished reading it, but the power flow is a flow from like there's basically an order to them, to the power flows.
Yeah, basically, like for example, take Nye, is you can access all the abilities of Nye in any order. You can be like, all of a sudden, I need to be secretive, or I need to be independent-minded. But naturally, when it does a complete cycle, it starts with call to imagine.
I see.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because like you'll jump around, but like in general, I mean, you're gonna be most native to this cycle, I guess.
Yeah, for the most complete and most energy building. That's how it tends to do it. Starts the call to imagine, and then it builds into things like perspective shifting and independence of mind and visionary drive at the other end of it, which is getting more action oriented, thus leading it to going into other powers, so it can kind of hand off what its vision into some sort of usage.
Yeah, remember all the powers are getting more powerful, and there's like the more conceptual form of the power, and then it gets into the more like kind of interfacing between, and then gets into like outright action in the world.
Exactly, and kind of handing off its package for other powers to continue to be pathway with. Does that make sense?
Yep, that makes sense. I just need to.
I get down to like the last point, and then I'm like, I got it. And then I go back to the front one. I'm like, oh no, never mind. I got to review that one a little bit now.
Just the first question actually combines the first two sentences of the paragraph. That helps.
Right. Okay, so each power of the psyche is in charge of a vast overall process, which includes all the different sort of abilities that have to do with a given power and what it's capable of doing, plus much more. General preferred flow has to do with the fact that every power has certain, abilities within it, and they have a natural way in which they are accessed as the preferred method, as the preferred way to access all those abilities, basically, which has a starting point and then a handing off point, which then leads into the next power that is then accessed and then used. This general preferred way in which every power has its abilities accessed from one to the next is referred to as power flow.
Oh. Ben?
Alright, just one second. Each power of the psyche has vast overall processes that they are in charge of. These processes incorporate all of the abilities of a given power, plus much more. While these abilities can be accessed in any order, there is a preferred flow that the powers are most conducive for the powers and most complete for the powers to go through, a preferred starting point and a preferred handing off point to the other powers. And this general flow is called the power flow.
Good. And Mitchell.
Okay, so each of the pod powers is going to be in charge of this vast overall process that actually makes it up, and that includes all the different abilities associated with the power and much more. All these abilities associated with the power can be accessed at any time, but for maximum kind of energetic power and efficiency, I guess, there actually is a starting point and an ending point that is the general preferred flow for those abilities to be accessed in for the power, and this general preferred flow is going to be called the power flow.
All right, Ben, take the next one. Give me 2 more beats before we go, and it'll be good stopping point.
Sure.
Let's see if you can do it.
Go.
Yes, it's color coding.
What are hand signs for in pod layer theory? How are the powers in the same quadrant distinguished? How are momentum and modulation powers distinguished?
Hand signs are gestures used to show the location of a power in the psyche by where a hand is placed on the head. Which of the 2 possible powers that are in the location that is being referred to is determined by using either a closed hand or an open hand. Momentum power use is signified by using the hand on the same side as the power being referred to. Modulation power use is signified by using the hand on the opposite side as the power being referred to, so that one must reach across their face to complete the gesture.
Yeah, two
To
complete.
complete the gesture.
That
It says across their face, complete the gesture. This should be the
thank
2.
you. Got it.
Yeah, that's good.
Two is like one of the easiest words to miss. It's just like one of those little connector words.
You know, the most infamous connecting word is
Is, okay, I just thought of something. Do you know how people very commonly say like and like when they're actually speaking?
Yeah.
It's just funny to think about, like, if you actually included that in your writing as much as you actually said it.
Typing it out, like, why? It doesn't make any sense, but it's like, yeah.
I think we do it. We don't put it in our writing because we know it's just filler words that we say to say something.
It's really just a kind of a stall tactic to your next thought comes through.
Like all of my communication and speech teachers from my past have told me to, or basically have taught that you shouldn't use those words when you speak. You should try to get rid of them, because, or at least refrain from using them, because they do for the most part end up clogging your message.
Indeed. That's what's good. If you kind of write things down, you can get what you want perfect and then just say that. Or
Yeah.
Or you can do the Obama. I like to that today, he just pauses. Every time you use an or a like,
He's so smooth.
He's kind of like, he kind of hums out the last part of his word and then just.
He's an absolute master at that.
He really is.
Who?
Yeah.
Obama.
Obama, when he talks,
Obama.
you can tell there's periods where like a normal person or normal human would say
stumbled.
or like. He just kind of takes these nice, very like mashable pauses, and he kind of like just slows down the word like. So today, America, and he kind of just says the last word slow enough that he always has his next thought ready when he finishes the previous word. He never finishes a word and then has like a moment of like, I don't have something to say. That's when usually we'll interject those ums and likes, is that awkward pause. He just stretches the last, his brain and his mouth know I need a little more time for my thought to come in. And like all these sentence fragments, he just slows down the end of the fragments so that he has the time he needs for the next fragment to boot up in his brain. It's very, very impressive.
He's very, very smooth.
It's like someone told him, like do not use do not. He's like, okay.
Maybe he did like really early on in his life, and someone like just crushed him over, and he's
really
like,
does feel like
I'm
that,
gonna
like-
fix this.
He's like, I'm gonna do this, and he got like really hardcore on
Yeah.
it.
It does. It's impressive.
I feel like I'm probably going to do that more and more because I'm gonna be going to I just did it there, but I'm gonna be going to job fairs and stuff so I can, try to get some professional internship over the summer or whatever.
Do not use them.
It just makes you a more effective communicator at anything. So.
Do not use them. Like,
But then, there's the other way, too. He probably got dinged on this one as well, because Naiji, a lot of times, we get both of them. We'll kind of do the thing where we're nervous, so we'll say, but then we go the other route, we're like, in the know. And then it's like, people are like, dude, take a breath. There's no ums or likes at all. We just will cram 3 sentences into a space of 1 sentence over and over and over again. We remove all spaces. We don't have extra spaces. We just take every space out.
yeah. A lot of times I'm just nervous even that I'll use like or like. It's more just that I lose my train of thought.
I don't know what the mojo of this guy is, but I'm watching some lectures on this guy. His name is Robert Sapolsky. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but he's doing like lectures and stuff, and he just goes, yeah, he just goes,
Right?
yeah, Stanford, exactly. I've been watching all of his videos and stuff. He's so cool and interesting, but he goes on and on and on, and he never pauses ever. But he has such great flow, and the way that he brings this charisma when he speaks is so awesome. You just want to listen to more and more of what he has to say, and he brings so much humor into his lectures. It's hilarious, so
What lectures are you
entertaining.
watching?
We should probably get back on so we
Oh yeah, sorry.
Oh, yeah, right, we're trying to get a few beats in.
I need to get that.
could pipe in that name in the side chat bar. I'll make sure I get him.
Right. I don't have the sidebar actually,
I
so
got it.
I'm on my phone. But I think Mitchell knows what I'm talking about.
I do. Might have spelled it wrong, but
Okay, got it.
try it. I know what you're saying. I have some lectures, but actually.
Powers of location that is referred to is assumed that the closer open. Hand signs are used in Podler theory, are used to distinguish the use of a particular power by location of where a hand is placed on one's head and how it's being placed and which hand is used and so forth. Powers in the same quadrant are distinguished by using either a closed hand or an open hand to distinguish whether the power is on the high SS index or low SS index. Momentum and modulation powers are distinguished by, for your momentum powers, putting your hand on, using the hand that's on the same side as your momentum powers, and thus, because you're using a hand that's on the same side as your momentum powers on the other side of your head, you'll basically be reaching across your head to get to your modulation powers. So.
Mitchell?
Shouldn't it say modulation power use is signified by using the hand on the opposite side of one's head? I feel like there's something missing there because it's not like
Where?
you're using, like if I'm an IG, I'm using my left hand to
Modulation
refer.
power use is signified by using the hand on the opposite side of the head. Is that what you're saying?
As the power being referred to.
Yeah, like you're
That's
using your
correct.
Yeah, is that correct?
That's
It's
correct.
it's implied because it says as the power being referred to.
Yeah.
Because
Honestly, no.
I guess in relation to the power being referred to, it would be referring to the left side of the head, right? So if the power is on the right side of the head, it's referring to the left side of the head. So it's on the opposite.
Momentum
curious-
power
Oh,
used to signify by using the
the reason why
hand
it
on the
might be
opposite
slightly
side of the
confusing.
The same logic is used for momentum, so we'd have to do it to both. So for momentum, it says.
I guess the reason it could be confusing possibly is distinguishing between left and right sides of the head versus left and right side hands, I guess. But I mean, it's
Well, no, it says hand on the opposite side.
By using the hand
but
on the
when
same
you're referring
side.
to opposite side, you're referring to the power. So it's relative to the power. So that's why the power is on the head, where the hand is
Right,
on
so the hand and the power are on the opposite sides.
Right, but opposite side of the head versus because basically the power is on the head. So when you say opposite side, you could just be referring to opposite side of the head. So that's why it might be confusing to say.
It's kind of backwards a little bit, isn't
It's the
it?
opposite side as the power being referred to.
Actually, I
I
think putting the head in might confuse it more.
Yeah. So I'm not sure that's really better. I'm just saying what might possibly be confusing when reading it is
Alright, it doesn't confuse me at all.
when you think of the size of the head, you don't immediately think of your hands at that time. So that's. But honestly, I think it's you can distinguish. Generally, it shouldn't be too difficult to.
No, it really shouldn't.
So this is approaching it from the perspective of the head coming first, not the hand coming first.
I don't
Momentum,
I was
think any of
thinking-
this perspective stuff at all. I mean,
yeah, it seems like they're
That's what it
connected.
is.
So momentum power use is signified by using the hand on the same side. Yeah, because same side refers to body, I guess, as the power being referred
body
to.
or the head. I mean, it's relevant.
Yeah.
It makes sense. It's just I had to like grasp it. It's sort of like saying the opposite of left is right. So like it's a
Same
double
side
negative.
doesn't
I don't know, sort of something.
necessarily refer to body. It could just refer to head because we talk about the dimensions of the head, for example.
Yeah.
So,
Either way.
but I think it's generally implied that when you're talking about both hands and the head, you mean just when you say opposite side, you're not even referring to just dividing in half your whole body.
All right then. Just about ready to look at it again really quick now, but
Cool. You're up.
I know.
Awesome. Gotcha.
Just that we kind of got a restriction.
Sorry, did I already go or?
Yep.
I think you did go. Yeah.
Okay. I totally forgot.
We're in zone.
I think we could even specify which quadrant in the first sentence, Coach. By where a hand is placed on the head, by which quadrant. We can even go as far as to say that. It also kind of like makes it more clear that there's 4 different places where you're going to be hitting on your head, as far as like where the hand is going to be going. So it could be said, hand signs are gestures used to show the location of a power in the psyche by which quadrant a hand is placed on the head. Something along those lines, maybe.
Okay, let's see here. Hand sign or gestures used to show the location of power.
You could say that makes a difference.
I guess another possible thing is because a hand gesture is also used to distinguish the particular power in that quadrant and whether it's
That comes up
complementary.
closed and open.
Yeah. There's the quadrants, and then there's the open and closed hand. Because
Right.
when I first read that first sentence, it kind of was like, hold on, now I have to think about where the hand is usually placed on the head. Like, is it ever placed on any place other than those four quadrants? And
Hand signs are gestures used to show the location of power of the psyche by which quadrant a hand is placed on the head. Does that make sense?
that's exactly what I'm saying.
All right, got that? Okay. So, Mitchell,
Do I have to include that, or
what's that?
do I have to include that, or?
Yeah, that'll work. I'll put in a sidebar.
I mean, it seems like the paragraph is attempting to explain each aspect of it individually. Because, like, if you want the first sentence to be an overview for what hand gestures are, it seems like you might want to include also that it specifies the particular power in use as well as modulation or momentum, but that may add too much to it.
But that is done by the closed hand, open hand, the second sentence.
Yes. But what I'm saying is, like, when it says that hand signs are gestures used to show this is definitely true. I just interpret these. The first sentence is usually meaning is basically a summary of everything it does, if that makes sense. But I don't know.
I'm sorry, I got confused there.
Oh yeah, I just very often interpret the first sentence as being a summary for what's being discussed. So in this case, I assumed, like, when it says hand signs or this, it would basically broadly encompass everything that a hand sign does, if that makes sense.
Right, so I think the quadrant thing's fine. So basically, what quadrant the hand goes to is signifying where activity is at. That's a good basic. What's
It just
I'm
says
sorry,
here
I've
it's
got to turn around here. What is the issue?
I don't think there's a direct issue. Just right now, it's very, the first sentence is very focused on basically one aspect of the hand gestures, as opposed to being a sentence that gives an overview of what the hand gestures are, if that makes sense. It describes basically an aspect of it, like one thing it does. It does show the location, but it also shows other things as well.
Right.
I think what Ben is, like, he wants to. I think what he's trying to say is that there should be like an overview sentence, like what hand signs are.
I don't think there needs to be. It's just I noticed, like, that in many of these introductory sentences it gives an overview.
Yes. Sometimes the first point is almost like an overview. So the first point here is location. I think it kind of serves as an overview.
And mentioning quadrants does make it more.
I mean, it's probably the most important thing about it, but it's not like.
Yeah. So I think it's a good.
I mean, it does say hand. It does describe gesturing, and the gesturing includes.
Maybe we need a more general, more higher level way of understanding hand signs then. Hand signs are gestures that we use to communicate mojo designs, mojo powers, and all that sort of stuff. I don't know, something along those lines. Maybe. And then with the second sentence can get into the quadrants. Then the third one can get into the open and hand.
Yeah.
Something like that, and then we can go further and further, breaking it down and down like that. But I think those are the only two things that are basically the mathematical aspects.
I don't have any problems with this currently, to be honest. It's just something with my commentary, I suppose.
Okay, let's go with it as is now, because I need to think on what would be the appropriate overview sentence if we're going to do that. I don't have it on top of my head right now.
Yeah, because, like, sometimes we use hand signs to just refer to, like, one power. Sometimes we use it to communicate one's full cognitive configuration.
Hold on. I think hand signs is also can be interpreted as sort of like hand gesturing to communicate language, you know, like hand signs, you know what I mean?
Right, but
you know, like,
it has a specific meaning here, which I think is pretty clear. Now, what you're talking about, Ben, actually, the way I'm seeing it now, maybe we don't need an overview sentence, maybe we need a cap sentence.
What sentence?
A capping sentence, not an overview, but the opposite, a capping sentence.
Oh.
So what would that be?
That would be saying everything we just said already, but then saying that by combining hand signs for the various powers, one can also indicate mojo and peak pathways. Right? Isn't that what you're talking about? That it also can.
Yeah. It's interesting because we modulation and momentum are already discussed. Because
I think everything's covered right now within the concept of power.
Here's what I'm thinking. Is in the first two sentences, just with those first two sentences, that effectively is what you would use if you want to refer to a particular power, just like any power. So if I want to refer to Jai, just those first two sentences would.
Well, I think it actually goes in three.
Would basically work regardless of modulation.
It actually goes area of activity. Then it breaks down to which of the two powers it would be, closed hand, open hand, and then it breaks down into is it momentum modulation.
Right. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we just point to in quadrant to refer to a power, regardless of. I mean, we'll still follow whether it's momentum modulation.
Right. That's implied. That's
sometimes.
implied by that update that was done to the first sentence by saying quadrant. So the first one doesn't. First sentence just says that putting the hand to the quadrant in question indicates activity.
Right.
So we captured that, and then we captured which power, and then we captured whether that power is momentum modulation. The only thing that's been discussed so far that I think might be missing, that I've heard come up, is that the fact that we do also indicate mojo and
right, and that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
The first two. If that's what we're missing, that makes sense to actually go at the end to build on the powers.
Right. I think that's good. I guess what I was saying is the first two sentences would fit for working with just a particular power, whereas the second two seem to lean more towards describing a complete configuration when we talk about modulation and momentum use. But I mean, you would still follow it.
I'm noticing some dissatisfaction here. I'm curious, what's wrong with the solution of adding a sentence saying that using these hand signs in combination can also indicate mojo and peak pathway? Does that not capture everything that we want?
Oh, I think that's fine.
Okay, then I'll add a sentence in. Okay, so I'm adding in, what did I say? By combining hand signs, one can also indicate mojo and peak pathway. Mojos and peak pathways. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Okay. So that in the sidebar there, that's the added sentence.
I guess I'm trying to think about just the logic of putting hand signs, of just referring to individual powers first, and then putting.
Because that's how the whole theory is done. Is we always start with powers, then build up to fields, to mojos, to peak pathway.
Okay,
powers are always the smallest unit.
Just real quick, Coach. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but
could we just put that in the first sentence with it, or I don't know.
I think that's confusing because that's trying to get them to understand too much, because the first thing you'd have to explain to someone is that if I was teaching someone, I would actually just explain to them ni. And you'd explain that first, and then once you explain that they got that, then you'd say ni, jai. I would build their mojo off of that. And then from that, I'd build pathway.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it just goes back to hand signs are gestures that are used to do it this way. And I guess the way I read that, like if I were just reading this for the first time, I would assume that that's ultimately what they were used for. But
well, it is. I mean, the primary thing. I mean, even when you're doing mojo and when you're doing powers, the first sentence I think with the addition of the quadrant, which I already put in, is the fundamental thing. You're always touching a quadrant indicating activity. That's the fundamental thing it does. And then from there you can get to where that also shows power. You can also do it to where you show modulation or momentum use of power, and you can combine them to show mojo and peak pathway. But basically, touching a quadrant where activity is happening is the fundamental of the hand signs.
I agree. Yeah, that makes sense.
But we include the other concept you talked about, that it also does mojo and peak pathway by a capping sentence. So that is added.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that puts it all on there, I guess. It's just...
Okay, is that okay for now?
Yeah, I don't have any major issues with it.
Okay. All right, let's go finish this beat up here, and then we'll call for today. Mitchell, you're still up.
Yep. All right. So, is anything changed?
No, there's a here. Let me put in the sidebar what the beat is now. In the first sentence, I included quadrant. Sorry, let me put a divider there. In the first sentence, I added quadrant, and then I add a sentence at the end saying that by combining hand signs, one can also indicate mojos and pathways.
Okay.
I guess maybe could we modify the first sentence to basically just say that hand signs communicate information about a power being used in some respect? Maybe not that exact reading.
I think what Ben wants is that universal thing where it's like when you talk about hand signs in the most general sense is an activity that humans use, or like as an activity that people use in order to communicate information to other members of their species or whatever, that kind of thing. As and then in terms of pod layer and the context that we use, we're referring to specific quadrants and powers and such. But I don't know if that's necessary to hand signs. People, I think, pretty much already understand in that like what hand signs are generally like that. So I don't know.
We can make the first sentence a compound sentence. Because I don't want to confuse them, because the hand signs are fundamentally about the individual quadrant locations. There are any builds on that, but
yeah, and we could say that. I mean, we could say they're fundamentally about that. So we could still start with it, but then say hand signs fundamentally serve the primary purpose of showing the location of the power.
What about this? What about this? Hand signs are gestures used to show the location of a power in the psyche by which quadrant a hand is placed on the head, comma. And by combining hand signs, one can also indicate mojos and peak pathways. Doesn't that act as the overview sentence?
Yeah, and then I guess there's like multiple layers to this where like,
I think that we have to keep in mind this can only be a beat. So we need to keep this to like 4 or 5 sentences.
Yeah, it wouldn't add any more sentences. Just maybe saying like hand signs serve the primary purpose of showing the location of power in the psyche by where the hand is placed on the head, and then you can include the comma if you want.
What? I'm lost now. I'm sorry. What is? Is it the word primary that you want now? What's different about what you said than what was said previously?
And that's kind of sort of where this, I guess, the core of where my thought process started with that. It's basically the first sentence.
I'm lost. Hand signs are gestures used to show location. That's what they are.
Yeah, I guess maybe just describing it as the primary purpose of what they're used for. Or their primary use. primary.
What would be the secondary
Because
use?
they're actually always used to do much more than that. Look, I guess they serve the primary purpose for that part of it. But every time a hand sign is used,
I don't think it's a question of primary or not primary, because really we use it to show powers, we use it to show mojo, we use it to show peak pathway.
yes.
I don't know if primary really is a factor. It's more a factor of building up from an alphabet
Okay, I
to
thought
words to
that
sentences.
was fundamental.
So
Maybe fundamentally.
the individual hand signs are like alphabet, and you combine the alphabet to make words, mojos, and you combine words to make peak pathways. So when I say hand signs, I'm kind of referring to letters, right? Hand signs are letters referring to power use. And then you can combine those letters to make words, mojos. And you combine those words to make paragraphs, peak pathways.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess I'm not sure, is primary not a good word? Maybe fundamentally, or
To me, I don't know if the word primary fundamentally needs to be used, because it's adding an accent that I think is kind of implied already, which is it's stating the definition clearly. Hand signs are gestures that show location of power usage. That is what they are. Not fundamentally or primary. That's just the definition of it.
yeah, but they also do much more than that. Like definitions are usually, they tend to be very inclusive of everything.
Right. So
About
I say, so this beat it gets more in depth, and if you want, like I said, we could take that last sentence, which talks about the other aspects, which is motion.
It just seems to be describing, I guess, like a third of what it does, if that makes sense.
Thing is, I think the power usage does get at mojo and stuff like that, because those are built up out of the powers
Yeah.
and the peak
I think
pathways.
maybe the issues here is there's like hand signs, and there's like hand signage. Do you see the difference? Like for example, hand signs with Podlayer, they are referring. There's no point when you're doing mojo or peak pathway that it ever stops being a hand sign equals a power. That's always what it does, and then just how you combine the powers make mojos and peak pathways.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of like all of the things that hand signs communicate, and that the location is like it just feels like a fraction of it, like a third of it, or maybe half of it. I don't know.
Too reductionist, I think is the word.
But I mean, mojos
Because
and peak pathways
what-
do
I don't
actually
know if
reduce
I
the
don't know
powers.
There's reductionist if there's something else to be done, but other times, sometimes you'll put a general conceptual sentence in. Other times you start with the foundational block, the beginning.
Like the mojos and the peak pathways do actually reduce to the powers, so
Yeah.
it's not really.
It's
Okay, so I think big picture, hand signs are what we as Podlayer practitioners, we use them to communicate, mojo, social alchemy,
Yeah.
all of that sort of stuff. It's a sort of language that we use with our hands and our head in order to get across ideas. I mean,
Okay, how about this then? Okay, hand signs are gestures used in Podlayer to visibly indicate powers, mojos, and peak pathways. And the second sentence,
Yeah, I like that.
location of a power in the psyche is indicated by which quadrant hand is placed on the head.
Can you say that again, Coach?
Yeah, I like that. That's really precise.
Here's Read that.
You'd have to email me it. I couldn't check it on the.
To visibly indicate powers motives.
I assume you meant to say
Yeah,
peak
I
pathways
really-
instead of peak ways, but yeah,
Yeah. Thanks.
that's irrelevant.
It seems like hand signs are useful for like everything about Mojo and human design. It's like a
No. I'm sorry. At this point, I'm really am lost. I don't know what else to do. They're used for powers, mojos, and peak pathways. What else are they used for?
right. So I'm saying this is really good.
Oh, okay, okay.
I'm not disagreeing. It seems like yeah, because
Does this capture what you're?
yeah.
It
I'm not
does.
sure if I guess I wasted a bunch of time by.
No, but I mean, if you feel stronger about it, I mean, I want to listen because you guys be teaching this stuff. If you want an overview, does that capture the overview? That's that first sentence. Hand signs are gestures used upon layer to visibly indicate powers, mojos, and peak pathways.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Okay, and then it continues on like it did before, and then it says at the end that combining hand signs, because it continues on talking about powers.
Yeah, I just want to let you know, Coach, like I never really had any major issues with what was there. I was just giving, like whenever I work with something, I continuously try to make it better, and I feel like I spent a whole lot of time talking about this, but I never really, I didn't want to take up too much time doing it. I just
Right. Well, I tried to explain.
I obsess over things very easily, and I do my best to give my best thoughts and how I think it can
No,
be
I
improved.
appreciate it. I appreciate it. I was
Maybe
trying
not
to. I was
always
trying to
agree
gauge
on
based
whether
on
it
your.
needs improvement or if it, going a certain way is really the best way to do it, or
Right, and you guys have put other things forward tonight, and I've tried to work with all of them and try to like weigh the logic and explain the thinking and so forth, and then we kind of go back and forth with some push and pull until there's like a resolution. It just didn't feel like there was one that was satisfactory. That's why I continued on. Is this?
Yeah, sometimes it takes more fleshing out.
Is this satisfactory?
I would have been satisfied with anything you said. Like I think I continue to like want to, I guess, feel an urge to improve it, but I don't think that necessarily that necessarily needs to be continuously called upon. Like at some point we have to kind of, because
Cut our losses.
we can't prove this book like to infinity. I could keep coming up with things that
No,
that
I know.
maybe
That's what I'm
could go a
saying.
different way,
Right,
but
that's-
we don't need to spend all that like infinite amounts of time on it.
I'm
I-
not sure that's.
And I thought we had a kind of rhythm going back for the ones we did previously, but there was like a ebbing of the pushback as there was explanations given or tweaks done.
Yeah.
But
And
with
I
this
think I had trouble communicating myself of what I exactly, because basically the thing that I basically triggered in my head is maybe it could go a different way, is that first sentence. And what I was initially thinking is perhaps maybe, and I brought this forward initially, is perhaps making it more inclusive, which you did right here. But then we started talking about other things like adding stuff on the end and so forth.
No, it was all trying to fix that issue of you didn't feel it was inclusive enough, and those were.
So is this the beat I'm going to be reading now?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, can I get it to?
Okay.
I think I get the gist though.
Here, I'll send you, Glenn.
Mojo, power, mojo, and then social alchemy,
Peak pathways.
peak pathways.
Basically, it made a sentence that talks about their usage for powers, modes, and peak pathways as like what it does as its totality, and then it breaks down how that's done. And I just sent the email to you.
All right.
Mitchell, do you want to read it out real quick?
Sure. Hand signs are gestures used in Podler to visibly indicate powers, mojos, and peak pathways. The location of a power in the psyche is indicated by which quadrant the hand is placed on the head. Which of the two possible powers that are in the location that is being referred to is determined by using either a closed hand or an open hand. Momentum power used is signified by using the hand on the same side as the power being referred to. Modulation power use is signified by using the hand on the opposite side as the power being referred to, so that one must reach across their face to complete the gesture. By combining hand signs, one can also indicate mojos and peak pathways.
The last one didn't need to be put in there, right? I think that was covered in the first one.
Yeah.
They're redundant now?
Yeah, it's redundant.
Probably.
Well, not really, because at first it just says they can do all of them, and it talks about powers. We never talk about
Yeah,
powers.
you can include both. It's not
So
necessary, but
I think I'll just add on by combining power hand signs. By combining power hand signs, one can also indicate mojo peak pathways. All right, let's do it. So who's going? I've lost track.
I was for a while. But we kept changing.
Could I maybe take a crack at it?
Maybe we could cut off the last sentence now, because you had the first one, and I think
No,
that-
no,
No, we just discussed that.
No, we can't actually, Ben, because the first sentence actually complicates things, but it does give an overview. So it gave an overview, but it then talks about powers, mojos, and peak pathways. The rest of the sentences only tell you how you do powers. So you cannot introduce the concepts of mojos and peak pathways and then only explain how you indicate powers. It's an incomplete logical loop.
Okay, so it basically added more teaching that needed to be done.
You've added more to that overview, and so you have to
Okay.
close it out. You have to close out how
I somewhat feel responsible for making this feat more, much more complicated than it was previously.
But it's more complete now. It's more complete.
Okay, that's true.
All right. But you see, Ben, by adding that in the
Yeah,
beginning, it has to be closed out. Otherwise, that logic is hanging.
that makes a lot of
So
sense.
you basically indicate that mojos and peak pathways can be indicated, but then only talk about how one does it for powers.
I don't even remember the questions. Are we gonna have different questions now too?
Gosh, let's see. The question I think should be pretty much the same, except
Okay.
We can work on that later.
yeah,
Okay. Well, how do we do this then?
yeah, that's a good point. Let me do it real quick here. I think this does it. Tell me if this makes sense, Mitchell. Because originally when it says what are hand size for and pod layer, kind of talk about how they're used, but now we switch to like a concept. So maybe just make it how they're used. What do you think about this? What are hand signs for in pod layer theory? How are they used? That does it. Does that work?
What are hand signs for in pod layer theory? How are they used? How are powers in the same quadrant distinguished? Power momentum and modulation powers distinguished, and then maybe do you want to add something in the end about how do the power ones build up into the?
Yes. Okay. Good. Good.
That's easy to answer, but I mean,
Yeah. How should we word that? How are mojos and peak pathways indicated?
sure.
Maybe we should have two separate beats for the mojos and peak pathways too.
No.
It's simple. I mean, it's
This is about hand signs. It's about hand signs. It should be done one beat. Once you say what are hand signs for, and you give them a beat on hand signs. There.
All right, that'll do. So, what hand signs are for in pod layer theory is visibly indicating powers, mojos, and peak pathways, and they're used by the location of a power being inferable from which quadrant of the psyche that the hand is placed upon. The powers in the same quadrant are distinguished by using an open hand or a closed hand to indicate whether it's the yang or yin power within the scope of that quadrant. momentum and modulation powers are distinguished because the momentum powers, you're going to be using the hand that is on the side of the psyche that it's touching, and then, or I should say, I guess at the head, but I guess the psyche is like kind of an abstract thing. But the modulation power, you're going to be reaching the hand across. So depending on whether you're directive or adaptive, either way, the modulation power, you're going to be reaching across. And then the mojos and the peak pathways are built up from the power hand signs by just combining them, just as the math builds up with those concepts otherwise.
Got it.
So, like, you know.
Well done.
Alrighty then. Okay, so hand signs are used to indicate, the powers, the mojos, and these peak pathways of, in Podler, that's the three things that they're basically used to indicate and describe and get across as far as ideas go. In terms of which location the hand is placed on, depending on what the 4 different quadrants are, it will that determines basically, which quadrant is being referred to, whether that be the worldview, stimulus register, compass bearings, or the pilot-based powers. Within each of those, to go even more specifically, the hand gesturing, whether or not the hand is being open or closed, will indicate whether or not the power that's being referred to is the yang version or the yin version within that quadrant. So the closed fist will refer to the yang power. For example, the left rear would refer to Vi being with the closed hand. The open hand would be the yin power, which would be referring to Nai as the power within the left rear quadrant. Momentum powers are signified by using the hand, whether that be left or right, on the same left and right hemisphere of the power that's being referred to. So Nai is a left hemisphere power, so you would use your left hand to indicate that power with the open hand. A modulation power would be used by using the opposite hand. So if you have V as a power that you're referring to as modulation, you would again use the left hand to refer to V, because V is on the right hemisphere of the brain. So that would indicate that the power is a modulation power, because you're reaching across your face to indicate, basically to show that to metaphorically kind of get across the idea that one has to reach to their modulation powers to sort of kind of get that idea across in the visible indicating of the hand gesturing or the hand sign. And hand signs can also be used not only to indicate the powers, as we have already done, but also to indicate the power, to indicate mojo designs as well as peak pathways as well.
Good. All right. Boom. Intense. Woo, we got it. All right, everyone. Sorry for running over so much, but I think we got a lot of good work there done tonight. Before we go, real quick, do we need to meet up on Thursday, or should we keep gathering pictures? Do you have something to show for us on Thursday, Ben, or should we?
I can show you what I have. I don't know if, it might be helpful to show you, or I could just keep working on it.
Maybe it's good to get our spirits up and kind of remind us what we're doing this.
Let's meet up quickly on Thursday, kind of see what you got.
Yeah, I'm probably just gonna have some I probably won't have any of the background logic